This is the Unstarving Musicians Podcast. The podcast features conversation for musicians of all types and genres, a curation of expertise intended to help all musicians be better at marketing, business, the creative process, and all the other things that empower us to do more of what we love, make music. Greetings, my little chickadees. This is Robonzo, aka Roberto. This episode of the Unstarving Musicians Podcast features a conversation with John Kiko Carney, a versatile Panama-based guitarist and new friend. John has and continues to perform throughout Panama, the U.S., and Europe as a full-time original artist. His resume is impressive. He's open for the likes of Bo Diddley, Styx, Little Richard, and Clint Black, and he's backed such legendary artists as Joe Cocker and Percy Sledge. He's also become a recent regular at the Boquete Jazz and Blues Festival, also known as the biggest little festival on the planet. Check out my conversation with John Wolfe in episode 6 for more on the Boquete Jazz and Blues Fest. In this episode, John Carney and I talk about his early doubts about being a full-time musician, the fateful day that cemented his path, working with Joe Cocker and Percy Sledge, among others, music as a business, his quest for orchestration, developing a signature sound, and more. I've taken a personal interest in John because he's local and quite good. Whenever he comes up in discussion, it's always with rave reviews. He's a wonderful guy who I hope to spend more time with in the near future, so please sit back and enjoy my conversation with John Carney. Hi, John. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Yeah, I really appreciate your time today. We're actually recording on a Saturday morning for those of you that are listening. And John, you and I first met. I think I saw you play for the first time in 2015 because I very recently saw you perform with a cover rock band at Picasso's, and I recognized the bass player, vocalist, and the drummer from 2015, and I thought to myself, wow, I bet John was playing guitar that night that we were here. My wife and I, we were at the time exploring Panama and Coronado and other areas as possible places to live. So, but we got reconnected. I believe it was this.
Was it Casa Florencia, the Italian restaurant?
Yes, and prior to the night before, I believe was St. Patrick's Day. So I saw you with Jim Votaw at Blarney Stone.
That's right.
Yeah, and then yes, I saw you at the Florencia with Andy Eggert.
Andy Eggert, Swiss blues guitar player, recognized by the Swiss government, and he comes to Panama every year and plays in Panama and Costa Rica, and I met him up at the Boquete for the Jazz Blues Festival. I think the first time was maybe 2013, and we've become really good friends, and I've played with him in Switzerland and Liechtenstein, if you want to look that up on the map.
Okay.
A couple times, you know. And he comes to Panama where I book him here in the city, and we do or in Coronado area, we do a bunch of shows together. And he's a hoot. He's a lot of fun.
Wow. So are you his booking agent here locally in Panama then?
No, yeah, de facto. No, I just get, I book him places that I play at. And so we set up some shows. And like Picasso's or Casa Florencia, we did the Hotel Riu. We've done in the past the Hard Rock Hotel. We've done the Balboa Yacht Club in Amador a few times. Lynchburg, which is a fun nightclub in Panama City in the San Francisco area, has the owner's German and Panamanian, and he has some German dishes and European beers. And it's got a sort of a European pub sort of atmosphere, and a lot of fun people. And I play there periodically, and he loves to have Andy because he loves blues. So I just hook him up. It's not like I'm his agent or anything. But
yeah, I was joking somewhat, but that's cool for him that you guys met. I gathered when I saw the two of you that he was a traveling musician and maybe here in part for the Blues Festival, the Boquete Jazz and Blues Festival. Right. But how nice that he has the relationship with you so that you guys can jam around. And you just got me a little more excited because Andy is threatening to be a guest on the podcast. We're not threatening, it's a word I playfully use, but I asked him if he would come on the show, and we're just trying to work out logistics, so it sounds like we'll get him on. So.
Yeah, and the time difference.
Yeah. That's a minor detail. We can work that out.
Okay.
So I have to ask you, because I'm from Texas, what is your Texas connection? I know a little bit of it, but can you tell us?
Okay, well, let me give you my whole background. I'm half American, half Panamanian. I was born here in Panama. My mother's Panamanian. My father was born in Denver, raised in L.A. He came to Panama in 1940, married my mom in 42, I think, or 43. I'm not sure what year they were married. And so I grew up here, went to school here, started playing here. When I left Panama, January of 73, I went to Albuquerque, New Mexico first, because I had an older brother that lived there. And my father was an only child, so I had no stateside relatives. And my American grandmother was still alive, but she was like in assisted living in L.A. So I went, my brother lived outside of Santa Fe, New Mexico, and I went to school at University of New Mexico in Albuquerque. And then from there, I moved to Houston, and that's my connection. I lived just north of Spring, Texas, just north of Houston, for 30-some years, 32 years, I think. And then about 5 years ago, my mother was 88 at the time, was living alone. So my wife and I looked at each other and we said, we felt like the little gerbils in the cage spinning around, and the little, toy thing there in the cage just going around and around and around, working. So we moved down here to Panama, and it's been a lot of fun. It's been great. And it's actually helped my career because I've met so many new people and so many, like, for instance, we were talking about Andy Yeager, to name one, and the opportunity to play with people from all over the planet. So it's been really, really wonderful.
Interesting. I would think that people might say it the other way around, that moving, and I guess it depends on where you are, and timing is everything, and relationships, but that you might move to somewhere like the U.S. and have your music career explode. But I do know, I'm discovering in the short time that my wife Sammy and I have been here, that there's a really rich music scene. And because of the Latin culture, and of course the pervasive influence of American and English culture, that it's a big variety. Really nice, spicy variety. So where did you and your wife meet, by the way?
We met there in Spring, north of Houston, in Halloween weekend of 1989, and we never looked back. It was almost instant. We dated for a few weeks, and within 3 weeks, it was a solid relationship. Of course, we were both second-timers, both of us coming out of divorces, and she had 2 boys, so we didn't waste any time. The following year, we were married, and we've been married 27 years.
I'll be darned. You'll be amused to know that Sammy and I met in 89.
Okay, wonderful. My wife is actually from Germany.
Okay.
She was born in Germany and raised in England. Her mother's English. And going back and forth between Panama and the U.S., it wasn't until I went to Europe that the next time I came back to Panama, we were talking about how international Panama is. I see a lot of European things here in Panama that I never saw growing up. European influences, and because it's a former colony of Spain, and you get so many people here from Europe as well. And where I live in Panama City, it's practically Chinatown. It's El Dorado, and there's Chinese people all around us, and they're really nice. So we love the ambiance and the international flavor of the city. It's very vibrant.
Yeah, I believe we were in your neighborhood not too long ago. We spent a couple of nights there working on immigration-related things.
Oh, yeah.
And, it's a nice neighborhood. I like it there.
Yeah.
Next time we're there, we'll hopefully catch you and your wife there. So you mentioned the University of New Mexico in Albuquerque. You strike me as a schooled musician. Did you by chance study music there?
Yeah, yes, I did. I couldn't figure out what to do with my life, and so I said, the only thing I'm doing is music. So, at one point, it's just, I felt like I'm wasting my time. I mean, what are you going to do with a degree in music? So I thought about going into business, MBA or something, but it's just not me. Just isn't me. So I just stuck it out with music. After I graduated, I was teaching and I was playing, and teaching privately at home and playing. And I thought, this is what I did when I was a teenager. This isn't a real job. So I went down to the unemployment office to see if I could land a real job. And first guy I talked to said, "What do you do?" And I said, I was going to tell him I was a musician. I said, "Nothing." And he goes, "And you're in your mid-20s. Keep doing whatever you're doing," which angered me. I was like frustrated enough. And then I went to a desk to talk to a lady, and she was in a wheelchair, and she was severely handicapped. And I went, if she can do it, I can do it. I got 2 arms and 2 legs. I'm just going to go back and make it work. So I left there, and I just stuck it out with music. No plan B. Music all the way.
Good for you.
Yeah.
I have almost, I shouldn't say opposite. I've been playing music since I was a kid, but I've been of the weekend warrior variety. So I've always had a regular, job or full-time vocation outside of music. And I had an older brother who had a stint in a band that enabled him to meet some then very famous people. And anyway, it all kind of crashed down in disappointment because of management and money. And I think my parents were a little gun-shy for me to be involved in music at all based on what they'd learned about his experience. But I was going to, ask you if you recall, I wonder if some musicians, as I did a little bit maybe, of course when you're young you don't really think, at least I didn't think so much about the future. And so I reflect on myself as not being super independent-minded to the degree that I just said, you know what, I love this because I did. And I still do, but I did not convince myself that I could make it full time. Do you remember the conversation in your own head when you were younger, or was it really nothing more than what you said was just like, well, this is me, and I'm just going to give it a go, and we'll see what happens?
More the latter, yeah. I just stuck it out. I knew I had to do more than just play because I wasn't going to put enough food on the table. And I got married in Albuquerque to my first wife. And she already had a boy from her first marriage. And so I had an instant family. And, I was doing everything. I landed with teaching at a music store, and then I was teaching privately as well. And that was really my bread and butter, was teaching. And then I was playing. But I would do anything. I would deliver papers. When I moved to Texas, I got a part-time job working as the guy in the white coat at a psychiatric clinic. Just anything to augment the income and make ends meet. So that's kind of been the story of my life. And I'd be teaching at a store, so they would hire me, and I'd work behind the counter in the mornings, and then go teach in the afternoons and play at night. I was going around the clock. It is not easy making a living in music. Not easy at all. Andy Agert, for my friend in Switzerland, he's on the road in Europe 280 to 290 nights a year.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, he never sees his apartment practically because he doesn't. And he started off as a plumber, but he's doing what he loves, and that's the main thing. You're your own boss, and you're doing something you really enjoy. So,
well, I hope that this podcast in the future is going to help make it easier for people to not only make it as a musician, but also thrive both financially and personally. There's a lot of interesting people in the music circles outside of the traditional industry that are sharing a lot of great information about the ways that musicians can make money today, and also helping them on launching their careers. And I have plans to invite some of these folks onto the podcast. I'm really glad you brought that up. The difficulty of it, and even in my brother's day, we're talking, I guess, late 60s, early 70s when he was doing his thing, and then it was hard, and everything has dramatically changed in music as far as working in the business, and some of it's good, but a lot of it is of course challenging. I have one friend, actually a couple, who have achieved pop stardom, and it's been interesting because they've both been in it since the 80s. So it's very interesting to watch them transform their careers in completely different ways. One is in country and now big band, and the other one played in a famous metal band for the better part of a couple of decades, and then maybe 3, and then now reinventing himself as a solo artist. So anyway.
I had several close calls. When I left Panama and I wound up in Albuquerque, I wound up in a band with the younger brother of Bobby Keys, famous sax player. He's passed away. Yep. Rolling Stones, Joe Cocker. He's played on Wonderwall with George Harrison. Played with a number of people.
Yeah.
And Otis Redding, Tina Turner, Allman Brothers. I don't know if it was Allman Brothers, so he recorded with them, I believe. But anyway, his younger brother sang and played sax, and we had a band, and it was very hot. And we used to back up Bobby and Joe Cocker and several other famous people. And we tried real hard to get a record deal, but it this was late 70s. And Daryl flew out to L.A. with his brother several times, but it never happened. And then later, when I was a few years later, I was in Houston playing, and I was playing country and western, just, putting food on the table. Mm-hmm. And I also played bass as well as guitar. And I was playing bass with the drummer and the guitar player for Clint Black before he broke it big. And they invited me to be in his band. And,
country artist, right?
Yeah, country artist, right. Killing Time, he has a lot of hits. And I turned it down because I really didn't want to play bass. I wanted to be a lead guitarist. And little did I know, they had the ZZ Top's manager, Bill Ham, promoting him, and they took off. But philosophically, if I had gone on the road, I would have never met my current wife. And I wouldn't trade that for $1 million. So I'm happy with my decision.
Yeah, well, that's the thing we have to reflect on, right? Whatever the decisions are, if you are in a good relationship like you and I both are today, you have to take a moment to appreciate what you have and realize it could have been completely different. By the way, speaking of Joe Cocker, I just last night watched, it's been sitting in my queue for a while on Netflix, the documentary Joe Cocker, Mad Dog with Soul. Have you seen this?
I watched that, yes. I loved it.
Yeah, I happened to notice that you had done this backup gig with him, and I knew that he had a reputation of being a drinker or partier or something, but it was these documentaries sometimes are just a little sad. But anyway, I'm glad it was not a tragic story, other than that we eventually lost him, but that happens too.
Yeah. But it got completely clean and sober, and
yeah.
But yeah, the first time he got up on stage, I was like really worried, because he woke up in the morning and drank noon, and drank cold whiskey out of the refrigerator first thing in the day. Mm-hmm. And then they were doing it in $1979, about $1,000 a day in cocaine, and then drinking all day and all afternoon, and that guy could barely walk. But as soon as he hit the stage, boy, it was just, his voice was just powerful. I mean, just ripping the speakers off the cones and off the frames. It's incredible, just incredible, the power of his voice and the command he had on stage. It was an experience I'll never forget. But
I was thinking how lucky we are we had him as long as we did, based on his...
Yeah, but I have no idea how, as messed up as he was, how he was able to pull that off. It was, because, it was all day long, messing his mind up. I
was waiting during the documentary for them to bring in John Belushi, the story, the Saturday Night Live thing. But anyway, it was. I was just like, oh, they're going to do it. They're going to do it.
Yeah.
But that would have been funny. One more thing about your education, and I like asking my guests, particularly those that are players, how do you feel the degree in music has impacted your ability to do what you're doing and enjoy your career?
Oh, immensely. I mean, some of the things I learned, don't apply, but you're geared towards becoming a music teacher in a school maybe, or that, But I really excelled at music theory, because I wasn't much of a reader going in, and I had to catch up to the other music majors in terms of reading music. But on music theory, we were on a level playing field, and I excelled. They hated me because I was the guy who got 100% plus the extra points.
You're like a severe theory savant.
Right. So now it's just a question of I've got the language, the common denominator language, and so it really helped me, like I was saying, putting food on the table. I could go from one genre to another and just pick up the accent of the music, whether it's country or R&B or jazz is one area I'm still working on. But I grew up, my father played a lot of classical records, but he also played a lot of bossa nova and a lot of boleros, Trio Los Panchos with Eddie Gourmet. And I heard all this beautiful Spanish guitar work, and that always stayed in my head. And so, in college I was learning classical guitar, and I also played upright bass in a school orchestra. And so really developed a love for orchestration and, the ensemble playing. And, you're just playing a little rock band or, to orchestrate the music a little bit, have certain instruments come in and out. And somebody, like you mentioned earlier, Weekend Warriors, they just start playing and they're all playing at once. and it's the same from the beginning to the end. And orchestration really helps to change the sound of the band. And so I try to emphasize that, but it's hard for me to get musicians to grab that concept. Everybody wants to play. So I'm always looking to create a sound, a certain sound.
Sure.
So
This is something I've learned a little later in life, although I was exposed to the idea when I was going to college. I did take a few music classes, and one of the most interesting experiences I had was with a chamber singers group, and I was oftentimes the only musical instrument other than the voices that were there on drums, and occasionally there was a French horn accompaniment, but I had come from playing rock very hard and not very, I shouldn't say not very structured, just, I had not developed that level of dynamics skills, and so it was very, very good for me. And then here, later in my life, I've also embarked on taking lessons with an online school. It's been great for me, but, we talk a lot, of course, about space. And plus, I've seen other bands of friends of mine where they have, I just interviewed a friend last week who has an 11-piece band. And, man, talk about a situation where you need a little orchestration, and
exactly, yeah.
People need space.
Yeah, it's like an artist's palette. You have each instrument's a color, and you don't want to put every color on the canvas all the time. And so you use them, you blend them, and two instruments can have a certain sound, and two other, then one of those instruments with another one's another sound, and utilize all of that. It's part of the palette. And so you'll hear like a jazz trio, and it's piano, upright bass, and drums all the time. Start to finish. It gets a little, I don't want to say boring, but it's tiring maybe, or something. I don't know the right word, but yeah, if you've got the instruments to utilize like that, go for it.
Sure. Yeah. I want to change gears and talk about the Boquete Jazz and Blues Festivals. I had the pleasure of speaking with John Wolfe in a prior episode, and we talked about you, of course. I believe he even recommended that I get in touch so we could have this conversation, but it sounded like an interesting story how you ended up being a main stage guy. Can you reflect on that for listeners right now?
We got here in March 1st of 2012, too late for the 2012 festival, but we heard about it. So in 2013, I went up just to check it out, my wife and I, and I got up, it might have been John Wolfe who signed me up for one of the jams. And I got up and I jammed and started playing with people there. And I did several of the jam sessions, and people heard me, and it went very well. It also went well because there was an author there, Jeff Lindsay, I believe is his last name. He's the author of Dexter. And his wife, Hillary Hemingway, is Ernest Hemingway's niece. And they're both authors. And they were there doing, promoting their books and signing and, part of the whole show thing, the shebang there. And we hit it off, and I got invited to play at the Panama for a little jam session that was there. And then I got invited to play at the owner of the Panamonte's home for a private party. And all of that went really well, and I started making some good connections. I think that's where I first met Andy. And so the following year, 2014, I got invited to play with my band as a Panamanian artist, because I am Panamanian, and they're always looking for local acts. I mean, part of the deal is to have the balance of the local Panamanians with international acts. So I went up with my band Gato Maximo, Maximum Cat, and Max Cat, with all Panamanian musicians, and performed. And I guess it was well received because they've been having me back every year since. Now this year, I didn't play on the main stage. I played at the garden party at the Panamonte. But other than the rain, we had some bad rain, it went very well. But next year I'll be back on the main stage. And like I was talking about earlier, about having a chance to rub elbows with people here in Panama that I wouldn't have in the United States. The bass player this year and next year is Scott Ambush, bass player for Spyro Gyra. I'm going to have Deanna Bogart join me, and Harris from Otis Taylor on violin, and I'm just going to have some great musicians on stage with me. That's such an honor and a pleasure. It's a little scary because we have like 1 hour rehearsal, and we got to go out and play in front of 1,000 people or more. But so far it's gone out pretty well, so just keep doing what I'm doing.
Yeah, that's great. I'm going to have Lee Oscar. I have him scheduled for a conversation pretty soon. Him and his wife, I believe, were gracious enough to schedule some time with me. But that sounds really cool. And I was.
I'll tell you a quick story. After the festival this year, I was playing Valentine's Day at Picasso's in Coronado. And some people had invited Lee and his wife to stay with them in Coronado. And they came out to Picasso's, and he was hearing me play with my little trio, and he goes, take me back to the house. He goes, I want to get my harmonicas. He came out, and he sat in about 3 or 4 or 5 songs, I remember. And we had a blast, People were really jiving on it. So, and he wound up buying all my CDs.
Oh, what a nice guy.
Turned the favor.
I'm sorry, let me give a little background for people who are listening. So Lee Oscar, noteworthy for his harmonica company. And then John Wolfe is the executive producer of the Boquete Jazz and Blues Festival. So for those of you listening, and you can check out John Wolfe and the conversation I referenced in episode 6 of this podcast. So that's a cool story. So you're going to be at a new venue this year for that festival.
That's correct. They're moving it over because, the amphitheater only holds 800 people. And so to get the money up for all of these artists, you have to raise the ticket prices, and they don't get cheaper, I'll tell you what. And you're limited to the capacity. So now, by moving to this other venue, where they have the Feria de Flores, the first fair of the year in Panama, it's right across the river. And you can see it if when you're crossing the bridge over from Boquete across the river, it's to your left, and all these flowers, beautiful area, and that area can hold thousands. So now they can reduce the price of the tickets so more people can afford them, and you have the room for all of them. So it's going to be a much bigger festival, hopefully, this year. I think that's, from what I understand from John Wolfe, the ticket sales are going quite well. So we're all optimistic.
So ticket prices will actually be lower this year?
Considerably lower. Not half of it. My wife just stepped out. She could tell us better.
Oh, no, that's okay. I'm scared to say anything because
Right.
she probably knows. Well, that's cool. For anyone who has ever wanted to explore Central America, Boquete is a really beautiful art town up in the mountains, and the area that John was describing is stunning. Perhaps I'll post a funny picture of me and my wife Sammy standing in the wind by the very river that you were talking about for this episode. But it's a great place, and I found even before ticket price changes, I was thinking to myself as I was talking to John Wolfe that it's a pretty affordable festival by U.S. standards, because I come from the San Francisco Bay Area most recently, and a lot of the festivals I frequently wanted to attend, I'm just like, wow, they're well attended, but they're expensive. So
right.
Great.
Have you been to Boquete yet, Robert?
Yeah, a few times. Really enjoyed. I'm only just now realizing though what an artist place it is, and so I'm going back with more open eyes, I suppose, in a way, next time I visit.
Oh, it's. I tell people it's a slice of heaven, and it's getting well known. I mean, I was in Houston playing, and this woman comes up and she goes, "Where are you from?" I said, "Well, I'm from South America." And she goes, "Oh, my husband and I are thinking about retiring to this little town called Boquete, or it's my So I started telling her all about it. She was surprised that I lived in Panama, but people are hearing about it. It's small town, I don't know, it's like 10,000 people, but it's got between 60 and 70 restaurants.
Yep.
It's got a nightlife. It's got an Boquete Community Playhouse, a theater that puts on shows in English. The Tuesday market was awesome. We go there and you can buy a little bit of everything. And wonderful food, coffee. I mean, it's just, the weather is just out of this world. So it gets a little rainy in October, November, and a little damp, but I'm a Panamanian. It doesn't bother me. I love it. So
I described it, or my wife and I describe it as weather similar to San Francisco in California, with the cool air and the occasional rain and whatnot. But it's a beautiful place. It's getting very dense, but there is a lot to do there, and it's we were saying, such an art town. So tell me about. Is it Gatos plural, Gatos Maximo, or Gato?
No, Gato Maximo. Yeah, let me tell you. I actually started it in the U.S. It was the American version was Max Cat, and what happened was I was playing with a lot of jobbers, musicians who play, for a living. And you'd show up. Sometimes you'd be introducing yourself to musicians you've never played with before. And you do this, a night. You'd play dance music or listening music. It'd be variety, pop, jazz, country, whatever. And then you pack up and you go home. And I felt like, like it's just spinning my wheels, because everybody knows the same songs, the same keys. And people think they were getting a band or they were getting a collection of musicians. Sometimes we had a band. I mean, I had a band in the 90s with Big Otis Band, which was phenomenal, nine-piece band with brass and choreography and great musicians. I had a drummer that used to play with the Temptations, trombonist used to play with Dr. John, and lead singer weighed 335 pounds at the beginning of the night and 315 at the end. I mean, he was just dancing like James Brown, singing like Otis Redding. He'd pick up a Strat and we'd play some blues, some Freddie King, and he let everybody have a moment in the spotlight. And for 7 years, that band was just kicking butt, But I got out of that, and then again, I'm just jobbing around with these people, and everybody. I felt like, I'm going to play the same old songs for the rest of my life unless I do something. So I put my own band together, and I'm not a front guy. I mean, I've always been a side musician, but for the better or worse, I fronted this band, and I said, we're going to play songs we enjoy, songs that are challenging, songs that make you a better musician, songs that you can't just show up and wing it. You got to know the song, and you got to work out the parts with the other people. And when you get finished playing the night, you feel like you've done something, you've accomplished something. And so that's exactly what I did. And it was an instrumental band, which is really swimming against the current, because people go out to, they want to hear some good old rock and roll or they want to hear singing. And we were trying to be sort of a smooth jazz band, but with energy and in your face, full contact smooth jazz. We had an incredible keyboard player who played incredible violin. He had a 5-string electric violin. And so we were doing Jean-Luc Ponty, and I was doing a lot of Earl Klug and Jeff Golub, and just really fun artists. The music was a lot of fun to play. And I did that till I left. And then I resurrected it here in Panama under Gato Maximo. And I'm trying to continue. The problem here is for the life of me, cannot find a keyboard player. So maybe this podcast will help. Maybe somebody will contact me. I'm your keyboard. So I hire keyboard players, but I've got a drummer and a bass player who are dedicated to the cause and will commit, and do whatever, the music. But I'm kind of stuck without a committed keyboard player.
On that note, how do musicians like yourself advertise locally when they're looking for a keyboard player or whatever?
Word of mouth.
Okay.
Yeah, because I've put out the feelers, and the problem is that you want somebody who's good,
right,
and somebody good's going to have a reputation.
Yeah.
Right. So I've hired some of the best keyboard players in Panama City, but they're in demand, and so they'll go, okay, when's the gig and what's it pay? Like, no, this is a concept band. We're trying to create a sound. And they go, okay, I get that, but I'm doing my thing. I'm just want to make money. And so I think the band will make money if I can get it together and get the right promotion behind it. But they don't want to take the long road. They want to take the short road.
Sure. All right, kids. So if you're listening, looking for a pro keyboard player here in Panama, it's a lovely place to be.
Or if you're a young guy without a reputation and you got some chops, get a hold of me.
Yeah.
So
I know that, I'm sidetracking here, but so in the San Francisco Bay Area, as far back as 2001 to maybe perhaps earlier, Craigslist, and up to now, Craigslist is a pretty good place to look for other musicians. Of course, Facebook has since come around and is a good place. You certainly have to have a community, but I know that there is a little Craigslist action here, and I realize one might think that they're not going to find the right caliber person, but you never know.
That's a good point, and at this point, I think I may have to, because, with the number of people that are moving here from all over the planet, okay, there could be somebody who moved here 2 weeks ago that I have no idea about, who is semi-retired and has a lot of chops. He can play and looking for something to do. And I wouldn't know about him. Nobody in Panama would know about him because they've just arrived. And they could have come from South America, Europe, North America, Australia, who knows?
Yeah. And, I know there are many, 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 but there are a couple of Facebook groups that come to mind. And I'll send you the info, but for those listening, this one's got a whimsical name, Schwilly Family Circus. And there is another one called, I believe, the Music Launch Hub. What I discovered actually this week, obviously everyone's from all over the country and some from around the world in these groups. But I actually was kind of reading through some posts and found one female artist who was asking if anyone lived in a particular city, in this case Austin, and she wanted to have a meetup to get together and network with other musicians. So I told a musician friend. Anyway, my point being that people are very mobile, and sometimes, who knows, we may find sometime in the near future some fantastic keyboard player who's contemplating a move to somewhere like Panama who would like to come down and audition and we'll see what they get another reason to move down here. So I would encourage looking at those two groups and some other ones. I'm sure there's a lot of that are based in Central and South America as well, where you can just network with other musicians and hear just tell people you're looking, and then also just happen sometimes to hear that someone is coming this way, and boom, you might have your keyboard player.
Yep.
Well, cool. And you guys have been together, the Panama version of Gato Maximo, for how long did you say?
Well, we did back in 2014.
Okay.
See, I moved here in 12. So I take that back, 2013.
Okay.
Yeah, when we started playing.
Yeah, cool. Very cool. You mentioned something a minute ago, and I wanted to get your take on it because it's something I wrote about in my book, which is also, those of you listening, in an audio podcast format. It's called the Unstarving Musician's Guide podcast. But anyway, there's a passage or chapter in there about subbing, the pros and cons. So subbing for other bands or bringing subs into your band. And one of the things I observed in my time in the Bay Area is that there are some bands that are kind of like you were describing. They're working musicians, and so they just want to do the gig, and they, for different reasons. Sometimes they just haven't found the right guys that want to stay with them or whatever, or they're working with other working musicians, so there's schedule conflict. So some of these bands are constantly subbing people in and out. And I've always contended, which I think you were saying, that you can kill your chances at establishing a sound or a brand, as I like to call it.
Yeah, because everybody has to play generically when you're subbing. I'll tell you a funny story. This last December, I always go back to Houston in December because there's a lot of Christmas parties, especially for the big oil parties and the companies, and they pay well. So this band leader gets a gig that pays much more than what he has for a particular night. So he calls another member of the band and goes, "You're going to have to be the band leader that night because I'm going to take this other job." And he said he hires a sub. Well, by the time the gig comes, everybody in that band had gotten better paying jobs and sent a sub. So the band that showed up to play the gig nobody knew anybody. Oh, no. And there was no band leader. And they managed to make it through the night because, again, it's generic music. Everybody knows the same songs and the same keys. And you just wing it and you get by. And see, that's what I got. I mean, if you're going to go out and make a buck, okay, you got to do that. But I'm so opposed to this. There's something about it to me is so unmusical. All right? If you're going to dedicate yourself to playing music, then make some good music and do something, express yourself. And if you just keep doing that for all your life, you're going to get to the end of where you can't play anymore, and that's all you've done. And that just seems kind of sad to me. So, but anyway, yeah, this band they were introducing themselves to each other, and who's the band leader? No, but there was no leader. It's just, wow, what a mess.
Oh my goodness. Did you actually perform with them that night?
No. I heard about this through the grapevine. I was up there. It was passing. The musicians were talking about it.
I was hoping you were going to say, nope, I got a higher paying gig.
Yeah. No, I just overheard them talking about it. It's like, that's too hysterical. Yeah.
So you have played several genres. including but not limited to rock, fusion, jazz, Latin, classical, and some others I didn't just mention. What are your favorites to play?
Oh my goodness, yeah. I wish I knew. I envy people like my friend Andy Yeager. Andy Yeager plays blues and he plays blues.
Yeah.
And he plays blues, and that's it. Okay.
Yeah.
You might be able to squeeze a rock song or two out of him, but he knows what he likes. He does it well, and that's what he does. And I've noticed, maybe I've got some personality quirk or something, but if I play one genre of music too long, I get tired of it. And that's another thing. When I got the Maximo together, Max was something that was versatile too. Versatile musicians that can shift from country to jazz to rock or Latin, and so that way I don't get burnt out, because I wind up playing one type of music for several years and I'm sick of it. And when I started jobbing too, like in the 90s, 2000s, I'd get hired from this band and the other, and so I would pop from one band to another and different styles of music, and that helped a lot. But prior to that, I was playing in a band and for a long time, and I can't really put my finger on what I like to play exclusively over anything else.
Yeah, I think I'm in the same camp as you, that I tend to want to try other things. I'm not nearly as versatile in my genre repertoire, but I do get that kind of antsy feeling. You reminded me when you mentioned Andy Eggert. When Stevie Ray Vaughan passed away, Eric Clapton was reflecting on him because they had played that night a festival together, and he was commenting that Eric Clapton, who loves the blues, had played that night. He was playing a montage of different styles that he had done over the years, and he said something like, and here was this guy that was doing nothing but blues and doing it so well, and I think he was really envious. But it's a different and Eric Clapton's story obviously is different, but it's kind of similar.
He can't play. Eric Clapton can't play anymore. Apparently he's got some kind of disease that's debilitating his fingers.
Oh, that's sad.
Yeah. Have you ever heard? Yeah, it's a neurological thing, I think, and it affects your extremities first, your feet and your hands, your fingers, toes. Then it goes into the last photograph I saw when he was in a wheelchair.
Wow, I had no idea.
Yeah, but he was experimenting. I cover several. He was learning fingerstyle guitar, and he had some nice arrangements. There's a song called Signy on his Unplugged album, which is almost like a Brazilian sort of Latin thing, and I do that. And then he had another one that was kind of jazzy called Reptile that I was on the following album, and then I heard him do some really nice version of Over the Rainbow with a bunch of jazz chords. So he was starting to branch out there towards the end into different styles.
Well, thank goodness. He left us with a nice, versatile body of work. Yeah, it looks like he may have done I know he played as recently as this year. It looks like at Royal Albert Hall, but yeah, I see some news here about his health. That's sad. I also, one of his, guys that he knows, I have heard, although I've seen him performing, that Phil Collins has got some health challenges too. Anyway, we all have these problems that we like to call old age that are various health things. So I wish him well.
Yeah.
So you have also done, you were mentioning earlier some of the opening and backing gigs that you had done, and a couple jumped out at me: Bo Diddley, Styx, Little Richard, of course, Joe Cocker. Any fun stories about those and lessons you learned from them?
Lessons. Don't know. When I opened for Bo Diddley, and the opening act for me was Clint Black. Before of course, he wasn't famous. He was just a local guy playing Houston with his cowboy hat and his acoustic guitar, writing songs, and he went on to big fame and stardom in country and western. And then my band played, which was sort of a southern rock thing, 2 drummers, 2 lead guitars, and then Bo Diddley. And he was a nice guy. We were backstage with him, and he was cracking jokes, and some of them I still tell to this day. But I went over to Clint Black because I kind of felt sorry for him. He was sitting by himself, And And I said, hey, you sounded great, man, great voice. I said, you should put a band together. And he said, yeah, I'm thinking about it. And I said, what's your name? And he handed me his pick. It had his picks had his name on them and phone number, kind of a business card. Yeah, and then let me see. I played with Percy Sledge.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was interesting. You know, some of these agents and promoters are really snakes. And we were contracted. This was in the 90s, the R&B band that I was playing with, that I was telling you about, to open the show and then back them up. And the promoter didn't want to pay us, I guess, and so they tried to get another band in. And we showed up, and another band to back Percy Sledge up. And these promoters have no idea, you know, what their business, but they're not musicians. And so the band was musicians who could play, but none of that genre. They had no clue how to play any R&B, and I mean, they were rock and rollers or something. And Percy Sledge was sitting there just sweating bullets, and we walked in, and he goes, "Oh, I'm so glad to see you." So we set up, and Percy said, "Well, let's rehearse." And so we started in the first Percy Sledge song, and halfway through the song, a minute and a half into the song, he cut it off. We go, "What's wrong?" And he goes, "Nothing." And he goes, I'm happy. You know? Yeah, that was it. He was just wanting to make sure and that night we opened the show, and then he came out and we nailed it. And packed house. It was a Huntsville, north of Houston, which is a college town. Yeah. And it was a nice show. It was a lot of fun.
Wow. By the way, I forgot to mention at the top of the show, we have another connection because I was born in Texas, in Fort Worth, and I have family in Houston, so maybe one of these days I'll see you there, too.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I go back twice a year. When we left, we had one granddaughter, my wife and I, in spring, the Woodlands, actually, which is north of Houston. Yep. And then our youngest son got busy, and he's got 2 kids. He lives in Austin, and the older son was in San Antonio for a while, but now he's in, San Bernardino area, inland from L.A. Mm-hmm. He's got 2 little girls. So
bunch of great towns.
Yeah,
great towns. So John, I frequently ask my guests about marketing and business-related things simply because I'm curious to know, at least at the outset of the podcast when I started, really curious to know about things that they'd learned, lessons, mistakes. But what I'm finding is, some of them have very specific stories to share when it comes, or thoughts to share when it comes to marketing and business. And I've also found that there are some that really aren't too involved in that aspect of it. And what about you? Do you do a lot of your own marketing or in sort of business affairs?
Yes, I do. And I would hesitate to call myself a business guy. I mean, I'm a musician, through and through. Mm-hmm. But it surprises me how many musicians don't get it, that it's a business. Right. Which is another thing about Gatto Maximo when I was back in the U.S. MaxCat, is that this was in the I wouldn't say infancy, but the social media was still a pretty new thing. This is 20 years ago. Mm-hmm. And I was talking to this one musician. I was saying, well, I'm building up a fan base, and I send out emails and texts on the phone and let them know where I'm playing. And I said, if I can get enough people to show up, I can fill a place up, and they're going to hire me back. Mm-hmm. And he looked at me and he goes, that's not fair. I just want to show up, get paid, play and get paid and go home. It's not called show art, it's called show biz. So I really, with my wife's help, because I'm a techno geek, dweeb, I don't understand this stuff, but she keeps me connected. I have a fan base in the U.S. and here that I tweet out, email, text, Facebook, all my performances, and thank God that I've got quite a few. I'm stay pretty busy. The month Andy was in Panama City in March, I did 15 or 16 gigs in March, sometimes 2 a day. Wow. Or, every other day on average. So, I stay pretty busy, and I let people know, and I try to get people to come out and with this, and also promoting the CDs. I've got my CDs for sale on cdbaby.com or on my website, which is gattomaximo.com. And anything I can do, I got songs played on Reverb Nation from one of my CDs. One of my CDs is Tuesday Market. It's a cover CD, pretty much. The other one, GSP, is 12 songs, 10 of which I wrote or co-wrote with my partner in the U.S., keyboard player, wonderful guy, Daniel Blanchard. So those can be sold on, played on the radio, and because I have the copyrights to them. And the third CD is traditional Christmas songs. The old ones, the medieval ones, none of the Frosty the Snowman or any of that stuff. And we do a real beautiful, quiet, almost, Renaissance-y sort of sound to it. And I actually better describe it as a Christmas Eve CD.
I like it.
Yeah. That's available at cdbaby.com because those are in public domain.
That's cool. Have you delved into any of the streaming music services? I don't remember. I have listened to much of your stuff on, samples online recently, and I don't recall. Are you on like iTunes or any of the other services?
Don't think I'm on iTunes. My wife's not here. She's, like I said, I leave all that in her department. I am on the Reverb Nation.
Okay.
And I think there's another one, but I should be more up on that, but I confess I'm not.
It's okay. You have a wonderful assistant in your wife. And by the way, she was fantastic in helping us coordinate our conversation today. Thank you so much for spending time with me. I really appreciate it. There's other stuff now based on our conversation that I want to talk about, but I think we'll save it for another episode, hopefully, to respect your time. And so you mentioned a couple of places where people can find you online, your website, gatomaximo.com. Are you anywhere else on social media that you remember the URLs for? I know your wife's not there with you at the moment, but
right.
Are you on Facebook or elsewhere?
I'm on Facebook, yes. And just do a search. I'm sure you'll find me. And I don't have a Twitter account yet. That's something that's kind of new to me.
Sure.
I'm 63, so I hear about it, and I imagine it's something I should do, but I haven't done it yet. So,
I think your next frontier, if you're going to dive into a new one, is Instagram, actually. And this is based on a lot of prominent musicians and industry folks. Not that Twitter's a bad place for you to be. I'm there, but I think Instagram is kind of a richer media for the arts at the moment.
Okay.
But yes, if you are searching for John, you can search John Kiko Carney, and it's Kiko and John John, and his last name is Carney, and you'll find some hits on him on Facebook. John, it's been a pleasure. I look forward to seeing you play again. I hope I actually get to play with you, maybe just a sit-in or some percussion someday. And I'm sorry we didn't get to meet in person for this. I know we were going to, but I'm really happy that we got to spend some time talking today. So thanks very much.
Thanks for having me. Thanks so much.
You got it, buddy. Hey, this is Robonzo. Thanks so much for listening. Did you know I'm also an author? Check out my book, The Unstarving Musician's Guide to Getting Paid Gigs, How to Get Booked and Paid What You're Worth Over and Over Again, available on Amazon. And the book is also available in audio format as The Unstarving Musician's Guide podcast. Check it out wherever you get your favorite podcasts. Last but not least, are you a gigging musician, recording artist, songwriter, or touring professional? Perhaps struggling to get your music out to the world? Struggling to get the gigs you want? Pop over to unstarvingmusician.com and sign up for my email list. I'll send you an occasional email with tips, expert advice, music, musician resources, and anything else I come across that might make your journey better and brighter. With much gratitude, peace, love, and more cowbell.